So I was just covering it more, learning more, and this story was just sort of forming inside me as I covered the real people. This sort of fictional version of their lives was coming alive in me.
Welcome to our latest episode of Book Reporter Talks To, where our guest today is Rebecca Armitage, and we are going to be talking about her novel, The Heir Apparent, which was a Reese's December book club pick, and it was also one of my 2025 Book Reporter Bets On selections, one of the last ones of the year. It slid in there because it's just that good. Booklist had this to say about it in a starred review. Tiaras, titles, and titillating royals abound in this engrossing debut from Armitage. The heir apparent is filled with secrets, scandals, and a few unexpected twists, more than a few, including a forbidden and beautiful love story. Her writing is spectacular, with rich dialogue and descriptions, a vibrant depiction of the burden of duty versus personal freedom, and unique insights into royal life. Now, I read this in a break just before the holidays, just before Christmas and over Thanksgiving. And it was the perfect book for me to escape with. I didn't do any wrapping of presents. I didn't do any ordering of presents. I didn't do anything. I just wanted to sit down and read the book. It was that engrossing. And she's joining us today from Tasmania, where it's now summer. So for all of us who are freezing up here, it's summer. And it's also tomorrow at 8 a.m., I believe. And
Yes,
I always love that because when I talk to somebody in Australia, I can say there is going to be a tomorrow. Like we know
there
tomorrow is
is.
going to happen.
Yes.
And with that, welcome, Rebecca. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute thrill.
So let's start by you sharing how you would describe the heir apparent, because I'm not taking this one on. I'm giving it to you.
Okay. Okay, so I would describe it as a modern day fairy tale. It's about a young woman called Lexi who lives here in Australia. She is studying to be a doctor. She's living with friends. She's secretly in love with her best friend, Jack. But she also happens to be third in line to the British throne, but she's deeply estranged from her family. So there is a skiing accident that makes her top of the line. So she has to go home, where her grandmother, the Queen, gives her a year to decide if she's going to stay and embrace this new fate and try to be a modern queen who reforms the monarchy, or she can be stripped of her titles and sent home. So the biggest problem for Lexi is her own doubts, but it's also the fact that she has a terrible secret, and if anyone finds this out, it's going to be very difficult for her to take the throne.
Good summation. Very good. You sound
Okay.
like a book. There you go. But I really love this. There's this really cinematic opener of the book, okay, where this helicopter lands and like you're landing on this farm, like they're landing here and they're whisking her away. So we're whisking her away as Lexi Villiers. And it's so cinematic because she has to go because all of a sudden we realize it's not just Lexi. She's the heir to the throne, but her father was the first heir and he's died in an avalanche. And her brother is in critical condition, is probably not going to survive. So she is it right now. And it's just that moment that I see it as so cinematic is like, here comes the chopper, you're up and you're going. And did you
Yeah.
always know that was your like cold open to the book? Because that's what I feel like it is.
Yeah, I mean, look, I had a lot of time to think about this book. I got the idea for it in 2018, didn't start writing it till 2023. So I really mulled on what this story was going to be, but it was always a couple on a beach and a helicopter spinning into view and breaking up their kiss. And that kind of almost predated. I didn't know who the helicopter was coming for, but it was obvious she was going to be someone important. So that image that really cinematic image was sort of the very first seed of the book.
I just loved it because you could just picture like, wait, what is happening? Like, why is this
Yeah.
happening? Where is this going? And I was amused by the makeover that they give her on the plane. I worked at a fashion magazine for many, many years. And as you say, the glam squad took over. And by the time Lexi lands, she is very much Princess Alexandrina.
Yeah,
Really road putting
Alexandria.
name. And right there, we see what's expected of her. Like we see what, as soon as she walks off this, plane, it's what to do. Was that something that came easily for you to write? Like, oh, wait, she's gone from this person to this person. We've made her into the image that we need her to be.
Yeah, I work as a journalist here in Australia and I cover royals a lot. So I'm not part of the royal rota, which is sort of like the press pool that follows the royals around because that's only open to British reporters. But I've got a fairly deep knowledge of, the royal industry, and it is an industry as well as being, an ancient institution. It is a business. So I was hyper aware of the amount of grooming that goes into place for female royals, and I wanted to sort of hit the reader in the face with the expectations and just the pure effort that goes into being this kind of public figure. So I really drew on that knowledge to sort of I wanted to give you a feeling like you were, getting a little glimpse over palace walls.
Yeah. And it's like they're tweezing her eyebrows, they're doing this, they're doing that. Like she's basically just sitting in a chair as a doll, and they're just making
Yeah.
her so that when she walks off that plane, she's got the complete right image. She's not looking at like
Yes.
farm girl, she's not looking at her doctor, whites or anything. No, this is what she is. So she's getting back to this palace where she's grown up. And there are these power plays and media leaks of what's going on. And all of a sudden, well, she's doing that, but she's guarding all these painful secrets of her own. So there's all these things going on, but there are things that she doesn't want, people to do. So I know you spent a lot of time as a journalist. Where did this idea come from? Did it just come from sitting and watching these people and saying, really, where can I make the story out of this?
Yeah, I'd say the very first seed of the book came from I think I was asked to compile some vision for the preparations for Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018, and at that point I probably knew a regular amount about the royals, like not a lot. Um, and so I didn't really, yeah, I was just like, well, this is a fun assignment. So I was just putting together these images, and it was clear to me that they were deeply in love, and he was very happy to be marrying her. But I now have this theory that Harry has no poker face. Like much like Diana, his emotions are just so plain on his face. And I had this sense that he looked very stressed about something. Clearly not her. Clearly he was thrilled to marry her, but I just had this sense like, oh, he looks, I wonder what's going on behind the scenes. And
Mhm.
that was the first seed of what happens if you're royal but you don't want it. Because I just almost had this sixth sense that he was not 100% happy with his life. And we now know there was a lot of drama going on behind the scenes between him and the family. So I suspect that was why he looked so stressed. But it just gave me this sense of, oh, I wonder what happens. And I didn't really know what happened if you wanted to leave. But I happened to have this job where I was covering royals more and more. I work on the international desk, that's what we call it, which basically means we cover everything beyond Australia's shores. So that's wars, natural disasters, elections, and everything. But royals comes into that. King Charles remains Australia's head of state, so he is something that we cover, and we cover it seriously. And so I was just, there was Queen Elizabeth's death, and then Harry and Meghan withdrew, and then there were the twin cancer diagnoses, and then there was all the scandal around Andrew. So I was just covering it more, learning more, and this story was just sort of forming inside me as I covered the real people. This sort of fictional version of their lives was coming alive in me.
It's like there was like a decade that not much happened, and after Diana, and then all of a sudden it's like up again of
Yeah.
every and happening on every single front. You're like, it's Andrew, it's the cancer diagnosis, it's the marriage, it's the brothers falling out with each other. And it's also, I was thinking, when you walk, who stands next to each other? How many paces apart? Are they touching each other? Have they looked at each other? I mean, commentators are saying, well, hey, they haven't looked at each other in the last 45 minutes. That's how closely everything is watched that they do. And it's really like living in a fishbowl. I mean, and she's going
Yeah.
back to the fishbowl is basically what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and I
And
think this is the bargain that royals strike. Like it's sort of the exchange is you get palaces and jewels and unimaginable privilege, and you don't really have to work. But in exchange, you are placed in a fishbowl, and you can
Mhm.
never complain about that fishbowl, and you can never leave that fishbowl. And the way Harry broke that bond was by leaving, and that's something that Lexi has done. But in her case, she's forced back into it.
Yeah, she's like, okay, show back up. And you're thinking like, well, how would he ever have to come back? Like, what would end up happening? And you really have the right setup because the three of them were away together, the two that were in line to the throne. And then all of a sudden it's like she becomes somebody that she wasn't, somebody that she
Yeah.
wasn't, she has to go back and be. Yeah, and duty comes up a lot. It's like being in the royal family is all about duty. It's all about duty and honor. And, talk about that life is measured by appearances and what they do. And recently, the report on last year came out of who made the most appearances and who has dropped in ranking and why they dropped in ranking. And I just thought that was something I hadn't really thought about. I mean, I knew that they had to do this, but I didn't know you were actually looked at as you made 226 appearances and you moved up from last year and why you moved off the line or whatever. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of because it is a really big thing within the family. Like Harry mentions this in Spare a lot, is that people get really obsessed with it, and they sort of like back end towards the end of the calendar, they start doing charity binges to try to catch up. But I think my theory is that they're born into one ranking that you can't control because it's based on birth order. And you're locked into that unless there's a huge tragedy or something. But the charity work seems to be a place where you can compete and you can try and one up your relatives. So they all try to outrank each other in this one way because they can't outrank each other in the way that really counts. So it was interesting because Anne is usually top of the list, but
Yes.
I think this year Charles sort of just pipped her at the post,
Yeah, and he was like,
which is interesting.
and he was ill, but he still did this. I mean, the way it was all written up and whatever as well was just so interesting. And you can see her just like stamping her foot in her room, going, "Why didn't I do five more? Why
Got
didn't
me.
I have to do something?" Okay, so Lexi's lost her brother, who's also her twin. But before this all happens, they've got this strained relationship. She's got a strained relationship with both her father and her brother. And I love how you explore how that happened. You do such a good job of taking the stories here and then bringing us like deeper into the story as the book goes on. Not everything is flooded to us it's front up front, but it's sort of like minced out along the way. That was brilliant, especially for a debut novelist. And I was super impressed because I would see something and I go, wait a second, wait, how did I miss that? And I'm like, no, you didn't miss that. She's telling you now that this is what's going on. So did you know from the start they were going to be twins, know that they were going to be estranged from each other right from the beginning?
Yeah, I wanted to do twins because I was fascinated by that idea of missing out on being monarch by mere minutes. Like yeah, like it's literally just a couple of minutes. So I thought that was sort of a fun thing to play with. And I also there's different theories. I mean, I don't think it's ever really been tested, but if there's British twins who are born to the heir, then the first one out is the winner. But in Monaco, the last one out is considered the first implanted, so they're therefore the heir.
Oh,
So there's all these sort of different ways of looking at it. So I just thought that was fun that they'd thought about this because it's like, God, those are some close births. So I also loved the idea of twin bond because I
mhm.
have this theory that it's almost impossible for the heir and the spare siblings to stay close and to have a loving bond that doesn't sort of fall apart. So I really wanted to test that with the twin bond, which is sort of siblings plus where you've been together from literally conception.
Mhm.
So what does it take to break apart one of the closest relationships on earth?
Yeah. Years ago, I babysat for these two little boys that were twins, and they were really funny because they could plot against you really fast. And they were in this, we had this round playpen we had them in, we were up at a swim club. And they said, looked at each other, they said, okay, Keith, okay, Kevin. And the two of them picked the thing up on either side and ran. And they were going in two opposite directions, and they knew that I wouldn't be able to get both of them. Like I might be able to get one, but the other was like off in the other direction. And I love that moment of seeing like the plotting though between twins. And I was thinking of them when they were young, before they started to think about they had to have had a much better relationship because you weren't scheming I'm two and you're three or something like that when you're that
Yeah.
little. So I was just thinking like what their childhood must have been like before the friction started to happen, before the friction started to tear them apart. Okay, Keith. Okay, Kevin. What do we do? How did you torture the nanny? It's the only thing you
Yeah.
can say. How did you torture the nanny? And there's so many secrets always between among the royal family. And you talk about how a lot is communicated in the press. Like it's
Yeah.
not said to each other, it's said to the press, and the press will then make that statement, and you're in trouble. And you're like, but nobody said anything to me. So let's
Yeah.
talk about what you've seen, like, in that direction as well, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely borrowed from real life in that regard because it's clear to me, as I said, I'm not part of the royal rota, so I'm not speaking to the royals themselves or their staff members, so I'm sort of on the outer, but that gives me a bit of clarity
Hmm.
in viewing what they do. But it's very clear to me that they all leak, all of them, literally every single one of them. There's not any one of them that doesn't.
Hmm.
And they all have sort of their favored outlets. So while, because people say, well, you can't trust anything you read in the tabloids, and that is kind of true, but it's also, there's a way of reading it to understand what's being said. So, Prince Harry really likes People magazine. So if someone, close to the prince tells magazine this, you can say to yourself, well, I don't know if that's the truth, but I certainly know that that's what Harry wants you to hear. That's his perspective. And then if you go to the Times of London and there's a someone quoted close to William, you can be pretty sure that is something that William's either sanctioned or someone in his office. So it's sort of like, if you've ever been involved in a family dispute or people have tried to tell you their perspectives on a family dispute, everyone's truth feels very true to them. It might not be the truth, but it's sort of like when you read these tabloid stories, you're hearing from someone about how they feel and their perspective. So you're like, well, I don't know if that's the definitive version of what happened, but it's certainly what you think has happened and it's your perspective. So there's just sort of a way of reading that. But yeah, they absolutely, it's interesting to me how much they communicate with each other via the press rather than just picking up the phone.
Hmm.
Like that is how they sort of telegraph. And it's interesting because everyone's like, Harry and Charles have had not spoken in X number of months or whatever. And it's like, that's true, but they absolutely communicate day in, day out through the press.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm having this conversation. Here's the child. Here's this. Here's that. Here's what you're missing. Here, yeah.
Yeah.
And I did love the role of Lexi's assistant, and it's very interesting because her name is Vicky, and she watches every move, and constantly, Lexi is worried about what she did wrong. Like, did my
Yeah.
shoe, was my shoe perfect? Was it this? Was it that? And this woman is rating her all the time. Like, she's constantly getting this rating. This is worse than getting rated like by a magazine article when you were young or something like that.
Yeah.
This is somebody who's just sitting there going, those were not the appropriate shoes. You walked in correctly, and blah blah blah. And I know there are people who do this for the royals. Like it was a big deal that Princess Kate recently lost her stylist and her
Yeah.
stylist leaving to go work for someplace else because I feel like they live in a fishbowl as we've been talking about. But these are the people who are really running their lives of you're going to wear this, you're going to say that, whatever. Am I right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And I think for women, clothes are vitally important to a royal woman because these aren't people who can write, an op-ed in the paper or get on YouTube and do a live and tell their truth. Like they don't have those options. So the way they communicate is either through leaks or particularly for women is through their clothes.
Hmm.
So, and you can see that sometimes where sometimes Kate will wear a really bright color and then sometimes she'll wear something where she kind of fades into the background. So that she uses her clothes sort of as her pen and her sword. And that is being facilitated by staff. And the interesting thing about the staff is sometimes they outlast the monarchs, and their careers are very much dependent on certain family members getting along or not getting along. I think Charles's sort of chief of staff equivalent, he was working for Elizabeth, so he's now spanned two monarchies. So you think of the power that man has, the influence that man has, and what steps he's had to take to retain that influence. Like there's basically two courts happening where there's the family and then there's all the staffers.
Hmm.
And it's just very intricate. And I think it gets very confusing about what is an institution and what is a family and what is relatives and what is colleagues. And that sort of tangle of emotions is where the resentments come from.
And marrying into this cannot be easy. And marrying into
Yeah.
this, if you're Kate, is one thing. If you're marrying into, if you're Meghan Markle, it's something completely different because you knew
Yeah.
Hollywood and you knew how you got ahead. And that's not what you do here at all. And if they
Yeah.
decide they don't like you, they don't like you. It's not good. Not a
Yeah,
good
and I think, everyone's got a different perspective on Harry and Meghan, and I try not to take too much of a position, but I think it's pretty clear that um, there was people within the family or within the employees really didn't like her.
thing. Hmm.
And when they form an alliance against you, it's almost impossible, I think, to survive under those circumstances. Like, it makes perfect sense to me why they had to go because I don't think she could have stayed when the sort of the palace industrial complex
Hmm.
spits you out. I don't know how you stay under those circumstances.
Right. And this is what Lexi's coming back and weighing because her grandmother's given her a year to think about, do you want to be the heir apparent or do you want to go back to your life? And you do a good job of moving her in and out of her decision as time goes on. And you see how she's making sure she's wearing the right stocking. She's making sure she's wearing the right things. And then she sits there and she pulls back and like, what is this game? And do I want to play
Yeah.
this game? And you do a good job of having her. At many points, I bet readers are saying, I don't know what her decision is going to be. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
what she's going to do because you throw her all in and then you put her all in another spot and all in. And you really show like what she's giving up and what she's gaining. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure about how much she's gaining, but whatever. There's jewels. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Did you have this all planned when you went into writing, or did you make a lot of changes as time went on as you were working on the book?
I went in with, I mean, I did have 5 years to think about it. So there were whole scenes sort of unwritten, but in my brain
Mhm.
when I sat down. But I think, and this is the first thing I've ever written, so I really freestyled it in a way I don't think I'd ever be able to do again. It was so instinctual, and it was so like I went in with absolutely no fear because I never thought anyone but me would ever read it. So I just sat down and wrote it from start to finish. I had a bit of an outline, but it was basically a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that was it. And I was just like, I'll just see how she gets there, and with absolutely no fear. And I miss that I will never be able to do that again because I think you only get that with your debut because it's such a freeing experience of no one's ever going to read this. So I definitely knew what her decision was going to be at the end. I knew what the triggers were going to be to sort of push her down that
Mhm.
path. But yeah, it was sort of helicopter and ending, and I was like, well, let's just see how she gets there.
How does she get there to what she's doing, to where she's going? There's also this friends to lovers here. We've got friends that
Mm.
are, okay, everybody's just friends, and all of a sudden they're kissing on the beach, and all of a sudden the helicopter's coming in. It's like, wait a second, situation aborted, stopping right, like,
Yeah,
right here where we pick up. I think one of the most fun parts was seeing how the various relationships evolve because am I going to go back to this farm in Tasmania? Am I going to stay? What am I going to do? And I just really like the way you put her and the different men in different situations in her life. And she'd had this like, torrid affair with somebody when she was down in Australia before she started dating, the guy of her dreams, maybe, we're not sure. And I just love the way you put her in so many different situations. And then like we're sitting there also trying to decide which one do we want for her as well.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's sort of I didn't want it to be her end goal to be a man. I think there's the unconditional love is a big theme in the book, and is it possible to experience all-consuming, genuine, forever love if you have the position of queen? And I think the thing Lexi's struggling between is can I have a love match, or do I need to find someone who is built for this life and who can be sort of my business partner and support me and be okay in the spotlight. Like it's not just who's the hottest, who's the best match. It's more about the kind of life she wants, the amount she wants her partner to know her,
Hmm.
and it's about what kind of career she's going to have and how that male partner is going to fit into that. So it's not just like, yeah, which boyfriend is the one that I want for myself. But
Right.
I love a romance, but it's not just that.
Well, and I also love the moment where they all go off to Scotland for the summer, and they go and her love from what Tasmania and his friends are coming up. Her other friend, they're coming up there, and the wardrobe is stocked with all the correct clothes. They've got their
Yeah,
wellies, they've got the suits, they've got the tuxedos, whatever they need to wear are there. And it's sort of like he walks in and says, like, what is this? Like, what is
yeah,
this that? And the agenda there changes every day. Like we're going to go fish one day. We're going to go have a final big dinner. We're going to play charades. And all of a sudden I feel, is seeing the world through his eyes as she thought this was like totally normal what people do. And now she's like, wait a second, what is this like? So let's talk about that whole Scotland experience, which you did such a good job of bringing us into.
yeah. Well, that's I didn't make all that up. That is how I think it might be different under Charles. I think he's a lot more chill, but under Elizabeth, there was definitely it sounded like the most stressful experience to go to Balmoral. And she had a rule that the Prime Minister had to come up at least one weekend every summer. And so I think, the Eton boys, the private school boys who had grown up in aristocratic circles were like, wonderful, I know exactly what to do. And then the Labour prime ministers, which is sort of the left-leaning party, those guys were like, I don't know. I've never really been exposed to this. This sounds terrible, but I think it sounded really stressful where you've got to have an outfit for
Everything.
probably 15 different scenarios. You can't overpack, but you have to bring everything. You have to drink the drink that's put down in front of you. You have to play the games the Queen wants to play. Like it's just sounds like the most stressful thing, but it's also a way of testing whether outsiders can join the family. And I think Lexi's unconsciously throwing Jack into this situation to see how he does. And while he does well in the sense that he does what is expected of him and he puts the clothes on, I think she has this sense of, I don't think he likes this. I don't think this actually suits him. And if you love someone, are you really going to force them into a life that's not really for them? And they'll do it for you, but they're not really going to be happy there. And I think that's the significance of that scene is she thinks he will move here for me
Hmm.
and he will not complain, but will he actually be happy?
Hmm. And his not being happy, what is that going to mean to me? Because
Yeah.
there's these moments like the Queen lends her a jewel. She lends her a jewel and says to her, "Here, she thought you might want to wear this evening." Well, that's kind of a really nice thing to have happen, but she's realizing it's a superficial thing, and it might be
Yeah.
because she also worked in a hospital where everything was life and death. It's not like she was working someplace where it was, let's even say what we both do for a living. It's not like journalism. It's not something like
Yeah.
that. It was really that life or death moment. And she's sitting there saying, am I trading that, like what I was actually accomplishing to help people, for what is this going to be? And I think that's going through her head at the same time too. It's like back
Yeah,
and
it's
forth.
different forms of duty because it's interesting when you hear the British people talk about the Queen, the fact that she was not meant to be the Queen, and then she became Queen through abdication, and she gave up everything, and they take a lot of pride in that and a lot of admiration for her, but it is this sacrifice she continually made for the people. And it was
Hmm.
this sense of like she gave up everything for her duty.
Hmm.
And that you can absolutely serve your country that way, but Lexi's grappling with the question of, is that better than saving lives day in and day out?
Hmm.
And she's not quite sure which form of duty she wants to dedicate her life to.
And we have this great scene where she goes into the hospital just to do a visit. And somebody says something's happening, and she's starting to give the medical reason of what they should
Yeah.
be doing right then. And she pulls back because she realizes that's not what my role is supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be in
Yeah.
the role of just going and shaking hands and making sure everybody feels happy. And I think it's one of the big light bulb moments for her, as will I always be happy just going in and shaking the hands.
Yeah.
And like just this playing this very superficial role, is that who I want to be? And she's
Yeah.
got an opportunity not to be because the queen has given her an out. You have a year.
Yeah.
You have a year.
Yeah, it's sort of like creating the image of this pretty young princess going into a hospital and shaking hands probably makes people happy. It's diversionary, it gives a sense of tradition. But is that a better use of her time than literally treating the person right in front of her?
Mhm. And she knows exactly what she should be doing, but she's keeping her mouth closed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love that she ends up living with Amira, who's lost her husband. Her husband was the other person who died in this tragic accident, while Lexi lost her father and her brother. And they're in one of the houses on the property. And I didn't realize, I confess, how many houses were on the property till Prince Andrew got kicked out of one of the houses
Yeah.
recently. And like he was in a house that it sounds like it was a little humble abode. It was not a humble little abode. And
Yeah.
where he's going to have to go from there. And what did you enjoy about writing about Lexi and Amira? Because they're two girls.
Yeah.
It was the four of them. It was the two brothers and the brother and sister always together.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it seemed like
I
fun.
loved I mean I wanted to represent the experience of someone who had married into the family from the outside.
Mhm.
And Amira is a British Indian woman, so she's not white, so she faces extra scrutiny and microaggressions and racism. So I wanted to explore that, but I also just wanted to explore a female friendship. So Amira and Lexi have been friends since school.
Mhm.
And then they've fallen out because Lexi did not approve when Amira married her brother for
Mhm.
reasons that later become clear. But I just loved the idea of these two girls who who lost each other and then they find their way back to each other. So in the midst of all this glamour and intrigue and secrets, there's just two women finding their way back to being best friends again. I just always thought that's so lovely.
It's so cool. And it was also, there was this blow up scene of like, you left me, you went and did this, you went and there are moments where the tension is really ramped up because Mira's blaming Lexi for so many things that happened to her, the terrible effect
Yeah.
it had on her. And she's completely confused. Lexi's like, what happened? You were like, in this, you have this beautiful life, you have this, that, the other thing. And she's not seeing completely what she did by her leaving, like by her not being
Yeah.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think she sort of I mean she made a decision she thought was necessary, but she didn't really think about what that meant for anyone else.
Hmm.
I think Lexi's sort of a little bit self-absorbed in the sense that she recognizes her pain and she's stuck in her pain, but can't quite see how other people are feeling. So she leaves and thinks no one cares. And then
Hmm.
she comes back and is shocked to find actually the ripple effects of her decision have been huge for the people
Yeah.
she loves.
And she sees herself as an object of fascination. Like this is like people are fascinated, like, oh, she came back. From where you sit at the journalist, like when you're covering them, do you see them differently than other people? Like, do you see like the way, not just the way they're perceived, that they are actually different because of who they are and the way they need to behave?
I think most people don't think about it too hard and don't pay too much attention. If I talk to people about the royals, they often will be like, "Well, I heard that William did this, and I heard Meghan did that," and it's clear that most people just do a cursory scroll of the tabloids now and
Mhm.
then, and what they read they take as gospel and then they go on with their lives, which is completely fair. Where I probably have thought about this and read it and critiqued it and analyzed it in ways that are probably a bit unusual. So I'm always like, no, but that rumor was spread by this person, and that was based on a mistruth. So for me, it's a little bit different. I think with all like my rule with journalism is to try and find empathy for everyone, not
Mhm.
sympathy or compassion, but just to understand where they're coming from and why they're making their decisions that they've made. And
Mhm.
so I've always tried to apply that to, I don't take sides, but with Harry and William, for example, I try to not take sides in that, but understand where both of them are coming from. And for me, it's pretty clear that every decision they make is based in grief for the loss of their
Mhm.
mother.
Yes.
And so once you understand that, then you kind of give people some leeway and some grace because it's not two brothers just trying to destroy each other for power and for resentment reasons. It's based on pain.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I'd say I probably perceive them differently just because I think about them way too much. But in every situation, I just try to assume I'm like, why is this person behaving this way?
Hmm.
And I wouldn't apply that level of grace to someone like Andrew, but I try to understand that he basically was born with no capitalist value. So he was born to succeed his brother. He's basically a backup plan. He was born in case something happened to Charles.
Hmm.
So his existence is sort of backup. And then as Charles gets older and has children and he becomes more and more obsolete, he's become addicted to attention, he's become addicted to luxury. But because he can't go out and get a job, he then becomes vulnerable to falling in with shady characters and billionaires and spies, people who want things from him.
Hmm.
And then he's basically a useful idiot to these people. So it's not that I have compassion for him. He's entirely responsible for the destruction of his own life. But I try to understand how he got to that point and why he made the decisions he made compared to his sister Anne, who was born in literally the same circumstances, but turned that into something productive and good for society and found a way to be happy within those constraints. So, yeah, it's always just for me trying to understand how they've ended up, how they've ended up.
Yeah, how they got there, how they got to like, where they're doing. And it is the death of Lexi's mother was this very powerful moment for her. And
Yeah.
there's a lack of understanding of what really went on. And I think that's also like what happened while I was sleeping. Where did all this go awry? And where she starts to put the pieces together, and this is what I mean, everybody, about the book being very complex because we have a lot of things going on. We're solving a lot of things as the book is going through that you think is this love story and is she going to become the queen or not? But we're also unraveling a lot of things that happened in the past and why they got to be the situation that they're doing. And that's one of the things that makes the book be so brilliant is because you're seeing like this story is happening and this. but wait a second, what did happen here? And it's been, there was something that happened with her mother that's like a line over here. And until much later, you don't find out what that something was. And you still
Yeah.
haven't solved the mystery of it either. So I'm telling you, I love this book. I love it. I love it. Um, the other thing that I really saw was when she was in Hobart. Okay, one thing I see is the difference between her and Harry. This is the big difference I see, is that she was going to become a doctor. Like she knew
Yeah.
what she wanted to do, and she was firmly entrenched in doing that. She didn't leave saying, like, I don't know what I'm going to be when I grew up. She knew that she was going to leave and, do this life of medicine. So she's down in Hobart, and she's what she loves about it is such a great description. Like she's constantly writing about how beautiful it is. Are you originally from there or did you move there along the way?
I'm originally from Sydney, and my husband is from here. So he was born in Hobart, and we met in Sydney. And then during the pandemic, like that first week in March 2020, I think we watched a press conference with the Prime Minister saying, it was sort of that week when the whole world shut down.
Yes.
And Will, my husband, said, I think we need to go to Hobart right now. I think we need to get in the car and go. And he had been right about everything. I was sort of in denial. And I was like, it'll be fine. This is all going to blow over. It'll be over in a month. And he was like, no, this is going to be a years long thing that we're going through. And so we lived in a tiny little apartment in central Sydney. So he said, we're going to be locked down for months, if not years. So
Hmm.
we need to go somewhere there's going to be space. And I think we should go back to my parents' place because they have a property with cottages on it. Like the vineyard in the heir apparent is basically their
Okay.
property. So we got in the car, we took the ferry across, and then we were the last boat across before Tasmania closed their borders and wouldn't let anyone else in.
Wow.
And then, and it was sort of, in the midst of all that chaos, because I had been thinking about the heir apparent, and I always thought it was going to be based in Sydney, but then when we got there, I thought, oh no, it's based here. It's in Tasmania because I liked the juxtaposition of her palace life, which is so controlled and nature has been conquered, but she moves to a place right at the very edge of the world where nature still reigns and it's rugged and there's winds sweeping off Antarctica and that you can be in the city but you see this beautiful mountain and you see this river and it sort of brings her back to nature and brings her back to the natural world. So it was sort of me arriving in this place and thinking, oh, like we've reached somewhere safe and somewhere beautiful, and I thought that's the experience Lexi's going to have. She's going to come here and think this is where I'm meant to be.
Yeah, the descriptions were just so beautiful. I tell you that if anybody said, "Where would you like to go?" and gave me a ticket tomorrow, it's Australia. I mean, and
Yeah.
somebody says to me, like, it really, and I always tease Sally Hepworth, and I tease all these authors. I'm going to come visit you, and they go, "No, no, no, we want you to come visit." It's like really funny, but I said, "No, but it's not just to go see Melbourne; it's to go see the places, just every place
Yeah.
around there." My husband looks at me and goes, "Not Europe," and I go, "No, long plane flight, Australia." And then I
Yeah.
was looking up because I obviously forgot geography. It's been a while. And where Tasmania actually is, I thought it was on the west. I didn't know it was to the south. And in the book, I learned it was like, you could close to Antarctica. You learn a
Yeah.
lot out of reading fiction. You'd be surprised how much, geography you can get out of fiction. But the way she was describing it, I just thought it was so beautiful. And it was just this story about, like what was happening and what was going on. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
got me.
Well, it's good. And I liked the idea of, she kind of flees to the outer edges of her family's colony
Mhm.
because Australia's obviously still part of the monarchy. And, there's a lot of colonial legacy here and the effect on First Nations people in all of Australia, but particularly Tasmania, is so, so present here. And you feel that pain and you feel the consequences of that. And so I thought that was sort of something important for her to face as well, is the real legacy of what her family has done through colonialism.
Yes, and you saw that in your afterword as well, where you
Yeah.
you make notice of the people that were there first, and
Yes.
and that's very much a part of what people say when they're in Australia. It's like this is like we know we took the land. We know
Yeah.
we own up to we're very very much owning up to what happened. There's something else to talk about in the book, and it's like eating disorders. And
Yeah.
Lexi's mother, sure sounded like, okay, yeah, we think we know who she was like, Diana. But it's also, these women are photographed all the time. And they're constantly, and what is the one thing we say about women? Oh, she put on weight. Oh, she doesn't look
Yeah.
as good as she used to do. And you think about how horrible we are to women in general. But in this, you're constantly looking. I mean, after Kate had recovered from her cancer surgery, you know what everybody was looking at. Like, did she lose her hair? Did she have
Yeah.
chemo and lose her hair? That is the one thing that we people were like stuck on because it's
Yeah.
all about appearance. And as soon as she went out, is it a wig? Is it you just heard the conversations. And so this thing of an eating disorder, it's like she goes back and starts to become just like that because she realizes she's on this 360 view all day long.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it would be very hard to resist that in under those circumstances because you look at, the way Kate is treated, there was that time her hair looked a little bit different and it was like a week-long story of everyone picking apart and, wig makers were called and so I just really wanted to know what it was like to be on the inside of that because all women are forced into this continual performance and continual sacrifice for on the altar of beauty. We are all forced into it, but the level at which a woman
Mhm.
on, in Kate's circumstance, it's just unimaginable of how you retain a good relationship with your body and how you nourish yourself when if you gain, half a kilo, everyone's going to know and it's going to be on the front pages of the tabloids. Like, what does that do to your brain? How do
Mhm.
you protect yourself under those circumstances? So for Lexi, when, the second she hits puberty, she's into an eating disorder because she's trying to control her body. And then she leaves and she heals. And the second she goes back, she's trying really hard not to go back down that path. But the more stressed she gets, the more unhappy she is,
Mhm.
the less she's able to resist it.
Right. And it's like, okay, this will make me happy because they won't write anything bad about me because I look
Yeah.
okay. I look good.
Yeah.
I look really fine. Yeah, I love the part where she's making soup and she goes, I can suture a laceration and I can with barely leave a scar, but my ability to make soup is felt like an alchemy. And I just love
Yeah.
that because there's so many friends that I say you can do. I always joke that I want to have a surgeon over for Thanksgiving and see how they cut the turkey. I want to see how they carve. Like I always sit there and go, gee, I wonder what you would do in that particular circumstance, scalpel, like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What do I need? So I love that line. I really did. So the one thing for instance, I saw that was really that she knew what she wanted to do. And then she's also got these two very different men in her life. She's got
Yeah.
Jack and Colin, and you probably can't put two different men, but they each would be great if there was a different part of her life. And
Yeah.
she's sitting there trying to decide who's gonna help me or who's gonna help
Yeah.
me wherever I have to be.
Yeah, like she's not trying to be chosen. She's the one choosing. And it's a choice between someone who knows her back to front, knows her weaknesses and the bad things about her and loves her anyway, which she's never really
Mhm.
experienced before. But who would not really be comfortable in royal life, and he would be probably quite trapped if and he would absolutely make that decision to be with her because he just wants to be with her, but she knows he wouldn't be happy. And then there's Colin, who probably is going to cheat on her and probably have a life, they're probably not going to be very close partners. They're not going to indulge each other in their secrets, but he was built for this life. He comes from an aristocratic family. He will be the ideal queen's consort, and he will love that life. And so it's a question of what does she want out of a relationship?
Yeah, and it's coming down to do you want the fame and fortune or do you want a life where you're loved and where you're
Yeah.
loved for the right reasons? I just think the complexity of the whole thing was, really interesting considering that this is the first fiction that you've written. I mean, I'm like, okay, gee, let's really start with something, you want it 5 years again, but let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do. So, how long did you work on the book? So did you work on it for a couple of, you had the idea for years, but actual writing?
Yeah. So when it got to a point where I thought about it for 5 years, and so I said to myself, I need to give this a go. So it was January 1st, 2023. So I said, okay, I'm gonna write every day until it's at least there's a draft that exists outside myself. And I'd never done this before. So I work as a journalist and I knew that the average news story is 700 words.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, well, I can do that every day, do that multiple times a day. So if I do 700 words a day, I should have a draft in 6 months. So I was like, okay, I'll just do that. And so I did it. And then I had a first draft in 6 months. And then I worked on a second draft for another 6 months. And then there was a period of about a year of trying to shop it around and sell it before it all sort of happened. But yeah, that first dizzying draft was just this 6 month creative burst that will never happen again.
I'm just like, oh, let me just go do this. And
Yeah.
finding an agent, did that take a long time? Did you get a lot of yeses and nos? And what happened along the way?
Yeah, it took about a year. And I got a lot of no's or just a lot of radio silence. And then I did this thing in Australia. We have this thing called literary speed dating. I don't know if they have that in the US, where you can basically this group called the Australian Society of Authors will put on this event where you can pitch, where unknowns can pitch to agents and publishers, and you get dropped into a Zoom call for 2 minutes, and then you've got to do your pitch,
Ooh,
and it's like really, really scary. It's such a great event, and there's so many people who've got through, been published that way. So I did that. I got interest from a publisher, and then I thought, well, I'm going to need an agent to at least, help me because I don't know anything about this industry. So I went to a friend who is, he writes nonfiction, but he said, well, let me put you in touch with my agent. So she was like, okay, I'll have a look as a favor to him, but she actually really liked it and she signed me 2 days later. So
whoa.
that it's sort of like there was a period of nothing happening for a year, and then it was all I had a book deal and an agent in the space of about a week. Like it was just sort of turned overnight.
Wow. And when did it send to sell to the US? It was later. Later,
It was
same time?
it was about a month after that. So yeah, my entire life changed in the space of about a month.
And Reagan was so excited about this book. She was just,
Yeah.
I wrote it right after I read it, and I said, I just think this is like, so well done. And she was so excited. So do you interact with other authors in Australia?
Yeah.
Do people get together? Is it just people? Now, this is going to sound terribly like, okay, this girl knows no geography. Is it just people in Tasmania? Are you friends with people in Melbourne? Like, what happened?
Yeah, well, I'd say the writing community in Tasmania is so beautiful, and everyone knows each other and looks out for each other and supports each other. So that's been so lovely to be a part of. And then because we're a small country, so we have a small publishing industry. So the second it was announced that I had a book deal, all these Australian authors followed me on Instagram, and everyone's sort of wishing each other well and saying, if you need any advice, please reach out. So it's been a lovely surprise how supportive everyone is. So yes, there's sort of a national community, and then each state sort of breaks into their little communities as well.
Is Jane Harper in Tasmania, or is she? I can't remember where she is.
I don't know. I think she's on the mainland. I'm just not sure
Okay.
where. She's definitely written about Tasmania, though.
Yes, maybe that's somehow
Yeah.
I'm connecting her with that. I know her, Sally Hepworth, and Kate Morton. Those are the three
Yeah,
that I know best. And like I said, I'd like to come visit. I'll just come
absolutely.
visit. I'll just come visit them. I'll just go hang out at their
Yeah.
houses. It's like so funny. Was the title always the heir apparent? Because it is in both countries and sometimes it changes.
Yeah, I sort of just picked that title when I wrote the scene where the Queen says to Lexi, "You are," because basically under British law, it's changed now, but we haven't seen it in action. But most women heirs are known as the heir presumptive, which means that yes, you will be the monarch one day unless a boy comes along and he can take the throne from you,
Uh-huh,
because the system
uh-huh.
always favors boys. So the term the heir apparent is usually only reserved for men. But I wrote the scene where the Queen said, "I don't care about all those rules. You're the heir apparent." And I thought, oh, that's a good title. So, and I did not think about it any more than that, and put it on the manuscript. And then that no one ever suggested anything else. So that's what we went with.
There we go. There we go from there. There we go from there. Was this the cover, the first one you saw in the United States? I know the other covers are different. The Australian cover is different.
Yeah, so that's the cover in the US and the UK. There's a different cover in Australia. We actually got pretty far with a different cover and it was, I really liked it. It was sort of half the face of a modern woman and half the face of an old painting.
Uh-huh.
But then I think they showed people, I think younger people in Cardinal's offices said, I don't like it. So it just wasn't working for a younger audience. So then we went with that. And as soon as we showed that, it was a yes from
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, I did. It's funny. I don't love the other cover as much because it shows a person, and this one
Yeah.
shows achievement. It shows the possibility of like it's going to go on your head. It's not on your head. It's the
Yeah.
possibility of it. That's what I was just seeing. Plus, I always like to dress like the cover, and I had a lot of clothes in this like tote. So, we were good on a sweater today. That's all they were good. Um, Shakira Sheet narrates the audiobook. And what about her voice and it inspired you? Because I did listen to some, and she does a really good job.
Yeah, it was interesting because I didn't really know what was involved in an audiobook, but they sent me a audio of three auditions, and they're all really good. I would have been really happy with all of them, but when I pressed play on Shakira's, it was like Lexi had called me on the phone. Like there was just something about her. I was just like, "That's Lexi."
That's it.
It was just sort of an instinctive thing, and she could do. I mean, her accent range is just incredible. So it was just, yeah, the second I heard her voice, I just thought, yeah, that's Lexi.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I did go out to her website to hear all the different voices she does in different languages. She's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't
Yeah.
familiar with her, so it was going out and finding out that, part of the experience. So then you have this other very lucky thing happen that this woman called Reese
Yeah.
Witherspoon gets in touch with you and says, "You're a Reese pick," and you're like, "Okay, I'm a Reese pick." Did you know the importance of that like from the start? Is that known around the world or is it a
Yeah.
US thing? And what was that like, whole conversation? How long did you have to keep it quiet?
Yeah. Yeah. The Reese's Book Club is definitely an international thing. Like everyone's like, oh, Reese picked this. I'm gonna read it. So I got an email from Reagan in July of this year,
Wow.
and it was marked confidential. And so I thought, oh God, I'm in trouble. Like that's just how my brain works. I'm like something bad's happened.
That would be me.
Yeah, yeah. And then she said, congratulations, Reese Witherspoon has just informed me she's picked it for December. And I really thought I was like hallucinating. I thought, oh no, 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 I'm reading the email wrong. It says I'm gonna pitch it to her. We've got no chance. So I had to read it like 5 times and I was like, this can't be real. So I showed it to my husband and he said, no, you've been picked for Reese's book club. Um, and so I had a little cry. I called my agent. We just said, "Oh my God," for like 10 minutes, and then she had to go. So it was huge. But one of the things is you have to keep it a secret.
Yes.
So yeah, and I really took that seriously. It was like I'd been entrusted with the nuclear codes. Like I told my parents, and then that was it. I didn't tell my sister. I didn't tell anyone. So I was just floating around for like 6 months with this huge secret, and I just couldn't tell. And there were people who found out when Reese Witherspoon put the video up. That's how they found out. So yeah, it's sort of it's I love book clubs. Like I just think they're such a great way to form community and get people reading. But to be in the book club, it's just beyond my wildest dreams.
Yeah, no, it was just wonderful. And I just love like now you tell your husband, now I have to kill you because like I have to
Now
go,
you know.
Mom and Dad, this is it. You can't tell anybody. I have one friend
Yeah,
that said, "Oh, I could never tell my parents." Like even when I was getting engaged, he couldn't tell anybody because they would just tell everybody else. Like
yeah,
that's the way it would go. So I don't think my mother would have been able to keep a secret like that. I really don't think so. I really don't. So that ends up happening. You get to keep this big secret. Then it comes out in
yeah,
December, and you're every place. I mean, we're seeing you on
yeah.
Instagram, and you're wonderful because you actually answer, which is like so charming because it usually doesn't happen, and just lovely. So did you see that this? Okay, so you're the race pick, and then people start talking to you about the book. And is it
Yeah.
this very different experience because this was your own thing? You thought about it for 5 years, then you started writing it. What's it like having conversations with people about your characters, your book?
I love it. I love when readers reach out to me on Instagram and tell me what they think and even criticism is good. I mean, I because I come from a journalism background, I've always sort of been in the arena
Yeah.
and news is quite brutal. So I've found people who criticize the book, everyone does it very intelligently and based on their perspective and their sort of literary analysis. So I really don't mind. It's just there's something so magical about people getting to a part of the book and then messaging you on Instagram saying, I just reached this part, and then they come back and they're like, now I'm at this part. Like it's just amazing. It's the highlight of this entire experience has been hearing from readers. I love it so much.
And when you think about it, years ago, you wouldn't have been able to do that. Years ago,
Yeah.
an author wrote a book. I used to joke that, the only thing you knew was on the flap copy. She lives she lives in Tasmania with her husband and her dog. Like, that's all you knew
Yeah.
about the person. And somebody said to me, "What's changed most?" And I said, "Well, authors are now personalities, and they didn't have to be.
Yeah.
You didn't have to brush your
Yeah.
hair. You didn't have to get dressed. You didn't have to do any of these things. And now you're 24/7 commenting about everybody's books and all these things that you didn't do before. And you're of
Yeah.
the generation where just talk all day long.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, you got to make a lot of videos for social media. So I can imagine that being because I come from a journalism background, it's that's kind of what I was doing before, so it's fine. But I think if I think it would be tough for people who are a bit more introverted and
Hmm.
they're not quite used to that. But I mean, I think hearing from readers makes it so much more real.
Hmm.
So I think it is ultimately on balance a gift that we have that ability to talk to each other.
Okay, so now I've already written the movie scene where the helicopter comes down on the lawn. Has anyone in Hollywood reached out yet and said, "Well, that helicopter coming down the lawn, we're going to keep that, and here's what we're going to do," or is that still like a deep secret too?
We're having conversations about it, so there's nothing I can really announce, but there's definitely been interest in potentially turning it into a series, which would be amazing. So we'll just kind of see. I mean, Hollywood's obviously not in a great place, like not a lot's getting made at the moment, so I'm not
Right.
holding my breath. But I feel like heated rivalry might give studios the sense that no women want romantic content based on books they enjoy.
Well, you know what else too, though? Look at the number of places that you have to shoot. And I learned this
Yeah,
years ago where somebody came in and said to me, like I had some of my book that I wanted to have them adapt, and they go, "Carol, there are way too many scenes. Like there are way too many sets. No, that's not
yeah,
happening. And there are too many people." And I think that in reading this, okay, there's Tasmania, there's the palace, there's where she lives. If you think about it, there are places, but you're not building a battle scene. You're not
no,
building this kind of a thing. And if you think about it, it could be very contained. I remember talking to Laura Dave when they did the last thing he told me. And she said, "Look, it's on this little boat. Like there's a lot that happens there. And then there's a
yeah,
lot that happens when you move." But thinking about how many locations really matters of is this going to be too expensive to shoot? And I think
yeah,
that's where a lot of Hollywood is thinking right now is this going to cost too much to do? Um,
yeah.
so, I'm rooting for it. If they need another vote, like I'm happy to step in. Happy to step in. Now you're working on something new. Are you on like some now? Are you on a deadline now based on the fact was this a one
Yeah.
book deal or a two book deal?
I got a two-book deal in Australia, so I will be turning the final manuscript for that in next month. So
Impressive.
yeah, so that's almost done. So yes, hopefully it'll sell internationally as well. So we're having those conversations now, but it'll definitely be in Australia, hopefully other countries as well.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
And that was a quick turnaround then. You know what I mean? It was like, wow, that was really good.
Yeah, well, it
I was
seems
talking about all these other things. I was doing that at the same time.
I was basically editing the Heir Apparent and writing a second book, but that seems pretty standard these days. It's just sort
Yeah.
of turning one around while you're churning out the next.
Yeah. It's like, you're going to be a book a year. You're going to book every 3 years. Like, what do you want to do? What
Yeah.
do you want to be? Well, this has been such a pleasure. I really appreciate you joining me. I really enjoyed the book, as you saw. Francesca really enjoyed the book as well, and it's been such fun sharing it with our readers because I think I read it at the perfect time of year. Like I wasn't on a
Yeah.
beach someplace, though I would have been if I was in Australia. Like that's, I mean, I
Yes.
am coming in the opposite season. I will tell you that, but I just felt like when you're reading it as a beach read, and I was sitting there reading it as the break from the holiday read, and it was just
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. So congratulations, and I wish you so much more success.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your support. It's been so lovely to get to know you and everything you've done for this book.
It's been a lot of fun. I love this is the best part. This is the best part.
Yeah.
So, and to everybody else, we look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks to.